Graduates Conversations podcast.
Hi, thanks for tuning in. My name is Fatih and I'm the host of the Conversations podcast powered by All Graduates Interpreting and Translating Services. I really hope you're enjoying our podcasts. Please make sure to subscribe to our channels. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. Now, if you have any topics you'd like me to cover, or if you have any guests you'd like me to interview, please send me an email with your ideas. My email address is fatih@allgraduates.com.au. That's Fatih, F-A-T-I-H @allgraduates.com.au. Thanks again and enjoy today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome again today to our podcast. Today I have with me Michael Nemrich, who is the National Operations Manager from NAATI. Hello Michael, how are you?
Good, very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
My pleasure.
Michael, so how long have you been with NAATI and what were you doing beforehand? Have you always been working for NAATI?
No, I have not always been working for NAATI. I've been with NAATI almost 2 years now, comes up to 2 years at the start of October. And prior to this, I was with Indigenous Business Australia for a couple of years, overseeing a portfolio of businesses. And before that, a Chief Operating Officer of a Aboriginal corporation based out of Darwin, but mostly through remote Aboriginal communities through the NT.
Oh, wonderful. What we wouldn't give to be in Darwin right now here in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's it. Nice and warm and freer than being locked into your houses.
Exactly. Michael, so what does the operations manager do at NAATI?
In short, make sure that we deliver what we say that we will. So everything from setting up the test sessions to the recruitment of the role players to taking the applications from the candidates, that whole candidate experience from booking into a test, running the test and getting the marks back out to them at the end is part of the operations team. So there's two really distinct parts of NAATI. We have a certification development and design team who create the material, work with rubric working groups and industry professionals to come up with the standards for the test and the test themselves, and then the operations side, which is the delivery of that to the candidates and also recertification of practitioners as well.
I think I've got the right person here if I want to ask some questions about the testing, right?
Absolutely, I'm your guy.
Very good. You heard it here, few people. So in regards to the testing, what's happening? Is it still going ahead? I mean, especially in Victoria, we're now in pretty strict lockdown. We can't even get out of our houses for more than an hour. So what's happening with Victoria and with the rest of Australia? Is the interpreter testing still happening?
Yeah, so I guess from the start, back in March, obviously we had to shut down all of our face-to-face testing. From March until June 30th, until we could work out what was happening. I guess, like many of other businesses around the country, no one sort of knew what was happening or how long it would go. And we certainly didn't expect Melbourne to relapse like it has now, which has been quite challenging. So from mid-March, we came up with so we have two distinct types of tests, I guess. We have our non-professional tests and our professional tests, being the certification ones. We managed with the non-professional tests, which is community credentialed language, to come up with an online solution for those over the course of a couple of weeks, and we started testing those sort of late March, early April, and we've delivered about 5,500 of those tests since the lockdown. And with certification, we always made the plan to go back to face-to-face testing from the 13th of July, which we did, apart from Melbourne, obviously, which was in the last minute. But the lessons that we learned from running the non-professional tests online gave us enough confidence that we'd be able to do certification tests through an online format. It's certainly not our preference. There's been some allowances made with the marking rubrics for items such as interactional management. it's not a completely remote task. It's not a completely face-to-face task. So there has to be some allowances made and some considerations of how the rubrics apply in that scenario, and some rapid development around what happens when the internet connection fails. The length of the test is considerably longer than the non-professional tests, which average sort of 15 to 20 minutes, where these tests, you're sort of talking half an hour, 45 an hour of time, particularly in the certified interpreter test, which have 8 tasks. They go for a lot longer, and there's a lot more inputs as well. Different role players, invigilators all logging in from different spaces, but we have been able to conduct tests. We've run 7 through Melbourne. We've run 7 languages in CPI level and 2 languages at CI level since July 13th in an online format. And we've just decided as of yesterday and updated our website that we'll continue in an online format at least until the end of October in Melbourne. We don't think that we'll be able to go back to a face-to-face setting, assuming sort of 6 weeks of stage 4 lockdown, 6 weeks of maybe a drop down from that in stage 3, and then hopefully we can resume testing in November.
Well, we also look forward to be tested face-to-face, Michael.
It'll be a harbinger of all other good things happening at the same time, hopefully being able to get out and exercise and get more than 5Ks from your house.
One can only hope so. So what happens if I'm going to be tested and my kid jumps on his PlayStation 4 and, does a little bit of FIFA 2021 playing and eats away all my data speed? What happens then if I'm halfway through my test?
Yeah, so we're just rescheduling all those candidates to a future date. So there's a fair bit of work involved in it's easy to think that online is easier. We've sort of been sold this from the start of the internet that anything that's online becomes easier for everyone. It is not in this scenario. There's a fair bit of work that goes in the preparation to it, working with candidates directly with the staff from the Melbourne office to make sure the internet speed's good, getting camera settings right, ensuring audio quality is good enough. But on the day, if something happens from any of the inputs, staff, candidates, role players, then we'll reschedule the test at no charge for the next available session.
Very good. So pre-testing checks are done on all sides, for the role players, for the candidate.
Yes. Yeah. And for role players, for example, as well, Melbourne in particular, but even in the last 3 months before we were doing the face-to-face and with all our offices shut, we were still recruiting role players, and all that training has been done online as well. So there's been a fair bit of development work in the background to try and keep the wheels of the business going throughout and keep people getting employed. We've got over 500 role players employed with NAATI at the moment across 38 languages that we'll test this year.
Michael, how many people are involved in an actual interpreting test? So we've got the candidate, I can give you one. So how many other people are involved in these tests?
Yeah, it depends on the day, but even just one candidate, there's at least an invigilator, 2 role players, a test supervisor, maybe a venue manager, and then 2 examiners at the end,
wow,
plus the person that uploads the files and allocates them out to examiners and then takes those results back. So just to handle the sort of one candidate on one day, there's around 7 or 8 people.
Plus then on top of that, you have the examiners as well.
That was including examiners, but we've got development prior to that as well. So there's multiple people involved in various stages of developing it, and that doesn't involve the other administration staff that look after customer queries and application processing either. But yeah, just on the day, somewhere around the 7 or 8, including examiners.
I think it's very important. We appreciate how much work is put into one interpreter test. So on behalf of all the practitioners out there, candidates, thank you.
Thanks.
What kind of a platform are you using when you're delivering these online tests? I mean, are they done through Zoom, Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, so currently we're using Microsoft Teams for the majority of our certification tests. We're working on new platforms at the moment. We have launched translator tests for the end of next month. we'd started developing it prior to the pandemic sort of hitting, and then obviously the impetus to create it even quicker was high. So we've got 340 odd people booked into tests through September and October now, and we're using a dedicated platform that we will transition our interpreter tests onto over time as well. We just want to make sure that the test is robust and reliable. This is a large part of someone's professional career is achieving NAATI certification, and we want to make sure they've given every chance on the day to achieve, and show the results that they can deliver from their training. So we use Microsoft Teams at the moment. The certified interpreter simultaneous task, we're using a hybrid approach with a couple of background programs as well, but Microsoft Teams is our primary platform at the moment. And then over the next couple of months, we'll be rolling out a couple of new features with new platforms that we've been developing.
And you mentioned translator testing as well, so that's going online too.
That will be online as well. So that will be September 22nd is the first date for translator tests. So the platform itself is in its final stages of development, and we'll be releasing information and mock tests for candidates to test their personal equipment with over the coming weeks.
We spoke about interpreter testing and translator testing. Does this apply for Auslan as well? Is that going online too? Because, it could be a little bit of a different style of testing. Does that require...
Not at this stage. Not at this stage. If we're working on... I've actually got a meeting tomorrow. We're going to spend some time trying to think how we can make it work. Our concern is quality of the video, quality of the... internet speed. I think in the long term, hopefully once we get past some of these harder restrictions, we'll be able to start offering testing to more geographically dispersed people in rural areas or overseas. Definitely with CT tests, we'll be able to do it now. We've already run some of our CPI tests to candidates overseas, but I think there's a real equity thing for Auslan candidates to be able to do the same thing, whether they be in Darwin or Hobart or Dubbo or Broome. And so we'll continue to try and work on how we do that. But with personal computers, I don't know if we'll ever quite get there. Again, just because of the resolution of the screen and the equipment that's available. But we might be able to come up with some sort of hybrid model where people go into a dedicated venue that we have an arrangement with, and we know that the quality of the material is going to be right. Again, it's a big day for people to get certification, and we want to give them every chance that they can to have it.
I was going to ask you, do you foresee these online tests used in the future? Hopefully once COVID has settled, majority of the testing has gone back to face-to-face. Do you see online platforms still being used in the future?
Yeah, I think we will definitely have online. For translation tests will certainly happen. We don't see our non-professional tests going back to a face-to-face at all. And I think there will always be there's always going to be a place for face-to-face. It's a crucial part of the interpreting industry, but I think we'll end up with more options for candidates with online going forward. We've just got to make sure that we are able to test all the skills and knowledge that's required. The candidates have every ability to pass as well, but it's definitely a part of our future going forward.
Well, I think COVID-19's changed our world and our industry, maybe for good. And, if we look at the rubrics, you've got the rubric there for face-to-face, you've got the rubric there for remote interpreting, but there is no rubric for video interpreting at the moment. And there is no testing for video interpreting. Usually there is 2 face-to-face tests and then 1 remote interpreting test, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's correct for the CPI level.
So do you see perhaps a video interpreting task put into these testing in the future? Because, through telehealth and through remote interpreting, video interpreting seems like it's going to stick around for a while, and AUSIT just released its protocols for video interpreting too. I don't want to push you to an answer, but do you, in the future, see video interpreting being a task in the testing as well?
Yeah, and more than just video interpreting, I think it's incumbent on NAATI to keep up with all industry developments and make sure that they're reflected in the tests that we deliver. there's no point having a test for certification that doesn't match what's happening in the world of practitioners. So I certainly can't guarantee anything at the moment, but all of those developments are getting looked at. We'll probably start, this is for Melbourne at the moment, has been a very rapid development, and it's a modified face-to-face rubric that we're using. But I think the learnings that we have over the coming months will inform a bigger review of whether a video interpreting task or several video interpreting tasks are appropriate to be included going forward.
Thank you for that. When I spoke to Mark a few weeks ago as well, and we can I think all agree that NAATI is doing all it can to stay up to date with all the most current developments, definitely in the last few years when you compare it to the previous times, I guess, where, testing was recorded for decades. It was done through recordings, and it's been done with live role plays now, as we all know, for the last couple of years, as real life situations tend to be a little bit more challenging than someone speaking to you from a recording. So
yeah, absolutely.
We really appreciate how NAATI has transformed itself as well with the current developments. So appreciate that. Thank you very much, Michael.
We've got lots of people in the industry that are really beneficial to us. We've got our own technical reference advisory committees. We've got local, regional advisory committees, lots of input from people. So it's an industry-wide thing. And I think we've been really happy that we've been able to adapt so quickly to COVID as well and continue to offer services to people. So it's been an all-round collaborative effort.
Well done to you. So if I'm in Victoria and my face-to-face test has become now an online test and I don't want to do it online, do I have that option? Am I able to not do the online testing and then do face-to-face when I can in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we loosened all of our cancellation policies and have allowed for any candidate to be able to reschedule if they were booked in a face-to-face, and now we can only do online. They can reschedule for nothing to a face-to-face in the future, but also to accommodate, this virus isn't just in Victoria. So if a candidate became ill up until sort of 8 a.m. of the test day in Sydney or Brisbane, needed to go get a COVID test, then we would absolutely reschedule them for free on that day as well.
That's very good to know. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of costs involved in these tests. Is that going to reflect onto the test fees? I mean, it's already pretty expensive, as we can all agree, for the candidate. Is it going to change the fee?
No, we've managed to hold our fees for tests. I think someone told me the other day it's been 5 years since we've increased, and we'll be able to hold them as it is now. I guess there's been a lot of work in NAATI about ensuring our financial stability, and the strong position that we're in allows us to both hold the test fees for candidates at the moment, but also it was announced several months back the practitioner support, where we've halved recertification fees for everyone over the next 18 months up until June next year, which was sort of an $850,000 support package to the industry. So a strong financial position that we've managed to do allows us to support in those ways.
I want to draw our listeners and viewers' attention to that in regards to the funding. And, like we said, it can be quite costly for the candidate, for one person to pay, several $100s, sometimes close to $700-800 or so. Where does this funding go towards? I mean, we know that the testing, there's a lot of people involved. The first question is, now that I can kind of see how much is involved in the testing, does the actual candidate's testing fee cover all the costs, or do you need more funding from other outputs?
So certification testing does not recoup its costs. We spend far more money than we recoup for a certification test. Again, without saying the exact numbers, most people could work out with 7 staff involved to test one candidate that the test fee doesn't go very far. And I appreciate that it is a lot of money, but it certainly doesn't cover the cost of that test. So NAATI's funding comes mostly from test revenue. We get less than 10% of our revenue comes from government who contribute each year, and that helps offset some of the costs of certification, but it's less than 10% of NAATI's overall revenue. The rest of our revenue comes from investments, test fees, recertification, and other applications and products that we offer. So the non-professional tests, we are able to use the funding from that to fund technical developments and overall administration costs that we can then not have to pass on to practitioners and certification candidates.
And does NAATI fund other projects as well, apart from its own testing?
We do. We have our industry development fund and our research fund, which is combined is $300,000, and then we also fund things like our Indigenous Language Advisory Committee to assist us in developing Indigenous languages. So we do, and we support critical link conferences and other items like that. So we try and support the industry as much as we can through various programs.
I'd love to speak to you about these projects in our upcoming episodes, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's great. And Michael, I think it's quite important that we reiterate the fact that NAATI is a not-for-profit organisation, and everything that it makes goes back to the industry.
Yeah, back to the industry and improving our products and services for the benefit of all practitioners, current and future.
And where can candidates and practitioners find more information about everything that we spoke about?
So most of the website is available, most of the information is available on our website, naati.com.au, and also we've got our general query line, which is info@naati.com.au, where we've got a group of staff that will be able to answer most queries if they've got them.
All right, very good, Michael.
4,500 queries a month through various sources. So, well, that was last month's query number. So, yeah.
Wow, it must be
elevated queries over the last couple of months with so much uncertainty around. We've been hovering around the 4,000 queries a month.
Wow, must be a really busy time for those people who are dealing with those inquiries.
Yeah, it is, but still we're getting through them and hopefully helping people out as well.
Michael, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All Graduates Conversations Podcast.